Has anyone had a celebrity NSFW encounter? What's your story? This is actually from a director I worked with. In the 80s. He was hired as a backstage dresser for a Broadway show that had Patti LuPone in it, and it was his first show. I don't remember what the show was, but there was a scene where she runs off stage. He was instructed to stand right off stage and hold his hands out at a very specific position, which is common in quick change situations where an actor might have to hand off or literally throw a costume piece to make their change. What actually happened is that his hands were in the perfect position to get 2 handfuls of boob. As she ran off stage, she pulled her breasts out so that he would grab them. Apparently she likes pranking new crew members. I was in the bathroom of a restaurant in Vegas taking a massive sh-tea. In walks someone and sits in the next stall. After a couple moments I hear, "Holy sh-tea, what died over there?" I apologize and eventually get up and wash my hands. As I was drying them, the other stall flushes and out walks Ryan fricking Reynolds. If I hadn't have just sh-tea, I would've sh-tea my pants. He looks at me and just shakes his head and asks what I ate so that he doesn't do this to his wife. I just mutter Subway. Anyways, we continue talking while he was drying his hands and he asked where my table was. I tell him. And by the fate of God, he was sitting just a few over. Next thing I know, my girlfriend and I are sitting at the same table as Reynolds and his wife. Honestly, the best 3-hour dinner I've ever had. I've met other famous people before, but I've never met anyone as genuine and down to earth as him. Edit. Of course this gets all the attention and doesn't get buried. To answer some questions. It was Blake Lively. Yes, he picked up the tab. Yes, they love each other. I'm no expert, but what they have is what I want in the future. And yes, his on-set personality seems to be his off-set personality. Probably the one time in life I'll be happy that I produced mustard gas and almost killed my favorite celebrity. I went to a pool party in LA around 2002 and there was a guy named Michael Bubble there. I don't think anyone had heard of him at the time. I remember meeting him only because my friend made fun of him when he introduced himself by calling him Michael Googly Moogly, which was a reference to a line in a Snickers commercial. For the rest of the night he was known as Googly Moogly. Later that night, I walked into the bathroom in the guest house and he was taking a sh-tea. I think it was about a year or 2 later that he became a big deal. I was next to the table of Leo DiCaprio at Catch in NY. Saw him get with an 18-year-old IMG model, then proceeded to take her home. Saw them leave together like it was nothing. The girl had the biggest smile on her face too. Not really NSFW, but I was at a hotel in South Africa looking for the bathroom when I got lost and ran into Lawrence Fishburne in a hallway. I pretended like I didn't know who he was and asked if he knew where the bathroom was. Like I probably would have asked anyone. Anyway, he was a very nice guy and walked me to the bathroom where he said, double quote, "The men's room is on the left. The women's room is on the right. The choice is yours." I almost died. When I was around 13, my cousin surprised me and took me to Leonardo DiCaprio's house. My cousin's newlywed husband was very good friends with him. This was around 15 years ago too, when Leo was in his absolute prime. And unbeknownst to him, I was completely and utterly obsessed. I'll never forget sitting on his white leather couch just waiting for him to walk into the room we were all in. And out he came with a trail of smoke behind him. High as a kite with a fat joint in between his fingers. And I mean, he was high AF. I didn't even recognize him due to his scruffy beard and long matted hair. Not really NSFW, but pretty funny that I was expecting him to look like Jack from the Titanic, but he could have passed as the dude. In early 2013, a female friend and I went to an after party that Donald Glover, Childish Gambino, was DJing at after one of his concerts in Sydney. After his DJ set, we were smoking outside when Donald exits the venue through a side door. We looked over at him and he immediately approaches us and introduces himself. Right from the get-go, my friend starts flirting with him hard. He asks us if we had any weed. We did. And he invited us back to his hotel to smoke with him. We ended up on the balcony of his hotel suite along with a couple of other guys smoking a blunt. My friend is all over him. I've never seen her try so hard to get with a guy. I could tell from pretty early on that he wasn't into it at all. He was staring off into the distance and ignoring her or responding with one-word answers. After about half an hour, he stands up and says, "I'm going to bed." My friend asks him if she should come, to which he looks her dead in the eye and says, "I honestly don't give a frick what you do," and walks off. We left soon after that. About a year later I read an interview with him where he said that he tried to kill himself on that Australian tour. In hindsight, the way he was acting definitely seemed like someone who was depressed. Not sure if Alexis Texas classifies as celeb, but she did take off her thong and stuff it in my face during one of her strip shows. I was in a very massive men's room at a venue taking a PSS. I was about 15 urinals deep and bathroom was completely empty, as far as I could tell, besides me. In walks Jack Black. He walks right up to the urinal next to me. Nothing weird happened. But I always found it bizarre that he didn't space himself out better. That's a man code violation. My sister ran into Matthew McConaughey in a bar years ago. They hit it off. And they went back to her place. She got overwhelmed by nerves and said she had to go run out to her car to get something. She sat in her car freaking out for God knows how long until he eventually gave up and left. Must have baffled the poor guy. I was shooting behind the scenes photos of a D-list celebrity boxing tournament in college. After a long day of witnessing the power of egos and 15 minutes of fame. The Octomum giving me Advil for my back. Coolio calling me a G. And seeing Jose Canseco put on fake tattoo sleeves. I was ready for drink. I had been talking to an absolutely beautiful ring girl and she wanted to join me for a beer after the fights ended. We went upstairs to the bar and she went to get us a table. I went over to the bar and while waiting for the drinks, freaking Ron Jeremy himself came up next to me. He said he had seen me talking to the girl all night and offered wingman for me. Luckily my confidence was already sky high for already getting the girl to come drink with me. So I politely declined and went to join her waiting at a table nearby. He told me to stick my thumb in her butt later for him. I worked my way through college as a waiter in a gummet room in Las Vegas. I became acquainted with Florence Henderson, RIP. And she would ask to sit in my station. One evening she had a guest. Joan Rivers. Me. Henderson had a favorite wine. Peace Porter. That she always ordered. It just so happened that on our wine list, that wine was labeled as number 69. That's how she ordered it. I'll have a bottle of 69. On this night, I approached the table, introduced myself to Ems Rivers and made the usual small talk. Then I asked, double quote, "So Ems Henderson, would you like a little 69 tonight?" OMG. Joan Rivers went completely insane. She started screaming and yelling and demanding security to have me fired and arrested. And the whole time, Florence Henderson is trying to calm her down and explain. Long story short, the maitre d' put me in another area and not long after I graduated and left that job. And I never forgot that story. This happened in 1985. I was at a Jim Jeffries stand-up show in Dallas. Sure enough, he pounds over 10 beers doing his routine. After the show he's hanging at the bar belligerently drunk. My friend and I head over to say what's up. Before we could say anything, Jim grabs my friend, forcefully bends him over and pretends to frick him in the ass in front of everyone there. Best night of my friend's life. Friend of ours is a hotel hospitality manager. She was alone in a room with Russell Brand. He very politely offered to have sex with her. She said her husband was waiting downstairs for her. Brand said he could come up too. Andy DCK tried to pull me into a bathroom after we did some blow together at a party in Hollywood Hills. I pulled away but he took my best friend who's a total fiend. He never told me what exactly happened. I live in Las Vegas and often see celebrities here. One time on summer vacation while in high school in the mid-90s when I was 16 and just got my driver's license. I was at the Forum Shops at Caesar's Palace with a friend and there was a crowd outside the Versace store, so we went over to see what was going on. Mike Tyson and his entourage were shopping inside and they locked the doors for him. After a while they all disappeared into the back of the store and we realized from having had a part-time job at the mall they were headed to employee parking behind the store. We ran down the corridor next to the store and headed outside where his crew were loading up Persian rugs and shopping bags into a Range Rover while Iron Mike was putting on a helmet and jumping onto a sport bike. My buddy and I start waving at him and right as he makes eye contact my friend switches from a wave to flipping him off. Mike ripped off the helmet and started shouting obscenities at us while we ran back into the mall shitting ourselves. My mom grew up with Rob Lowe as her neighbor. She dated him in middle school and they were apparently found making out in a closet at school one time. She says that he was one of those kissers that uses enough tongue to lick your vocal cords. I once motioned for Brittany Snow to sign her Maxim Hot 100 photo. She pushed her hair in front of her face and gave me the cold shoulder. That was definitely the most awkward wait for a plane restroom I've ever experienced. She just stood there facing the wall like some freaking Blair Witch victim. I went to Miley Cyrus' 18th birthday. Was hanging out with a few friends for a car show in LA and apparently this chick that was with us, who I hadn't met until that night, was dating Miley's brother. Turns out they were going to Miley's place for a party and asked us to drop them off. We dropped them off and as we were driving away we decided, frick it. How many times are we gonna have a chance like this? We turned around and hit up the chick to see if she could get us in. She said sure and we ended up partying there for a couple hours. Hadn't seen Miley all night and next thing I know I'm in the kitchen and I look over and she's by the sink taking a hit off a pipe. At that time she was still this perfect Christian Disney star, so it was weird seeing her smoking weed just a few feet from me. Apparently some guys nobody knew ended up sneaking into the party and grabbing a couple purses, to include Miley's, and ran off. Once that happened they kicked everyone out and we went home. I found out later that her phone was in the purse and had a video of her smoking salvia, which got released to the public and was the first of many things that changed everyone's image of her. Side note. On the ride home we ended up totaling the car cause our driver fell asleep at the wheel. It was a great night. Me and my now wife was at an Irish bar in Mick. I went to the toilet and when walked back a guy was stood in the way watching baseball drinking whiskey. I said excuse me and he said sorry, but looked down to hide his face. Went back to the MRS and she asked what was up. I said I've just seen Michael Keaton. I'm a huge Batman fan. She was telling me to go over and say something but the bar was packed and how he reacted to me I knew he wanted to chill and watch the baseball. She was badgering me for a few minutes all while pointing and me shaking my head and saying no. As I looked over I saw he was looking at us, but he turned away quick. My wife was facing him and still on at me saying I'm an idiot for not doing anything. He stopped talking abruptly and said, "He's walking over." I looked towards the bar and saw him get closer. He stepped in between me and my partner facing me. I turned to him. He put his whiskey on the bar, winked at me and walked out the bar. I think he realized what she was saying and I wasn't going to do it, so he came over to show his appreciation. I've been approved by the Batman. Not a NSFW material, but it's an excellent celeb encounter. Kinda well-known guy in Broadway. Met at a party through a cousin in the field. Ended up having a fling for a few months. As he and his wife are in an open relationship. No, that's not a lie, he told me. I met her several times. We all went on a little weekend getaway with her boyfriend as well. Was a good time. 8/10 SX. Didn't work out because of his schedule and me moving. Not me, but my friend banged Mark Wahlberg at Cannes in the late 90s. They were at one of the parties. They drank. They flirted. They went to his hotel room. They boned. Pretty standard stuff for Marky Mark around that time, I reckon. My friend was super hot with perfect 10 tits and ass. So I wasn't surprised she pulled a movie star.